Yeah, hi folks. My name's Ian Harding. I'm the BIM section head at Jacobs here in Ireland. Today I'm just going to talk about leveraging digital solutions from design to construction install. So I manage a team of 12 people here in Ireland. We're both BIM coordinators and 3D spatial coordinators. I'll talk a bit about what we do, who Jacobs is, and a bit around how the impacts we've made in design influences construction, and then taking that into construction and executing on site. So just very quickly, a little bit on Jacobs. If you don't know who Jacobs are, we're an engineering company that originated out in US and Texas in 1947, around 55,000 people worldwide, and in pretty much every market you can think of. And the reason why I say that, to start off with this slide, is because, it's okay. Cheers. The reason why I say that is because it's important to focus down around what my group actually is involved in, because Jacobs is such a large organization. Like I said, we're in pretty much every market. But here in Ireland, the team I work with is predominantly focused around life science, so pharmaceutical construction projects. Globally, we have about 3,400 resources throughout pretty much every country you can think of. But here in Ireland, what's very interesting is we actually hold about a quarter of that resource pool. So across the entire globe, 1 in every 4 people in Jacobs in pharmaceuticals is actually in Ireland. So the knowledge actually lives quite centrally here in Ireland around how we deliver projects. But look, just to focus it down a bit around this discussion around what we do in BIM. So I'm going to start off with this slide, which you saw a teaser earlier, but I start off with this slide, which I'm sure you've seen variations of this before. This is a fairly simple, but very, I think, a great example of where we sit in digital, and it kind of stems from what Brian and Colin talked about. Consistency is very important. Innovation is very important. Helping teams out, because everybody's so busy delivering projects. What do we actually do to help drive that innovation forward and deliver change, and that's actually meaningful and impactful to our teams on site? So what I'll talk about today is not necessarily going from a square wheel to a round wheel, but certainly there's elements there of where that lives. So us ourselves, I think in the BIM world, in digital world, like we do operate in that space where we are those people that may look to hold the wheels, but it's very important. We may not have the round wheel today, so it's important as when you're sitting in a business that it's actually, you're given the opportunity to try things. It's not always going to work. There's been great stuff that the likes of Colin showed there around drones. It's worth taking a shot at it. The outcome was there, but if it doesn't work, it's important to have that environment with the company you work on to allow you to explore and innovate. So we're lucky here in Jacobs that we do have that opportunity, but I will show you a couple of examples of things that actually did work. Before I go on, I want to take you on a little bit of a backward step around where we've got to the last couple of years around how we deliver projects, the design intent model, and what we use to deliver a project. So a lot of our disciplines use it's Revit and Plant 3D, so it's process engineering, a lot of piping, a lot of process implementation diagrams that are produced on our projects. So traditionally we use Revit, Plant 3D. We host it all in the Autodesk Construction Cloud environment. That's our common data environment. We use Navisworks as an archive model, so we have a record of what's been produced in the federated model. But in this day and age, we look at a way of live collaboration, how our teams work together every day, where we have an updated model overnight, and it's constant collaboration between the various teams, whether that be the Jacobs team, our client, or the people that we work with to deliver the projects. We also obviously have 2D deliverables, as was mentioned before, 2D deliverables, and we also have that connectivity between the various software applications we use to support. So what's very big in our industry is the P&ID drawings, the process implementation drawings, and we traditionally use Bluebeam. A lot of the other stuff we actually push through Revistu now, where we have the 2D connectivity with the 3D and an issue tracker all in one solution. So I want to talk about, I guess, the background of that technology component, so that's our technology stack, and what our team in Jacobs Ireland looks to support between that 12 people that works with me. But there's another element to the whole coordination side of it in design, which is determining how best to deliver the design intent out to site to build it. So example on screen here is extremely important around getting value for money, as well as making sure the actual build and engineering design is fit for purpose. So while we can talk about technology and the elements of technology, they're really there to serve a purpose and how our teams work together. Not one person knows everything. We have got experts from India to Poland to US to Ireland who all collaborate together to make sure we deliver the best outcome. So the technology is an enabler, but the people is central to that. Like I mentioned, we do use Revistu as of the last 2 years, working inside of this platform to coordinate that design. And I've just thrown up an example issue that's been raised, and you can see there what the platform looks like for us in one of our projects. That was just a little bit of a background around, set some context. I do want to tell you a little bit of a story now, which involves around, because we have the technology today, what can we do to better enable our construction teams to deliver out on site? So I won't go into too much detail around the Clash tool itself. This is a view, I'll refer to it later on. This is a view on one of our projects. You can see here, it's a Clash test that's been set up in Revistu. We're able to then push the issues into the issue tracker, but it's a standard way of working. But what we found is in this tool, we have so much flexibility in how our teams operate that we now want to see what can we do with that tool that better enables our construction team. So the story goes, down to people-centric, we had an engagement with our construction team, trying to understand what are the challenges they have out on site. Our team are keen to address any challenges and work together with the design and construction team. So we sat down, had a discussion, and one of the topics we talked about was around intumescent paint. And if you don't know what intumescent paint is, on structural steel, it's a coating that's applied that enforces or protects the steel against fire, against, the structural integrity of the steel is protected. Intumescent paint coating is applied, not applied on every single, only on the really important structural integrity items that exist in our projects. The real issue with the structural steel and intumescent paint is, on the left-hand side, on that image on the right, you'll see that's the coating applied. But when there is a fire, the actual intumescent paint expands, and it can expand up to 50 millimeters. So when we had this conversation with the construction team, understanding, well, what's the problem with 50 millimeter expansion? Well, the reality is, in the design, when we design really, really tight spaces, really, really tight environments, that 50 mil could actually be the difference between, when there's a fire, the process pipe being knocked and all the chemicals in that process pipe leaking in that fire, which could make it catastrophic. And this is a problem in construction that needs to be addressed, and often it doesn't get addressed until site. Our engineering design is fit for purpose to get there, but there's often problems on site. So what we've done is we've looked at that as a story, that's the problem. So how do we bring it back to design to be in fact impactful, that when they get to site, they don't have this issue or it's severely reduced. So we've worked with the structural design team. As you can see on the screen there, we've actually embedded the property inside of Revit that outlines what steel is actually going to have intumescent paint on it. And you can see that is showing up inside of Revistu. We've then generated a search set, which is looking for any objects with that intumescent paint, so it will grow over time. Every time a new property gets added in Revit, a new model gets updated in Revistu, it will add that into Revistu as part of that search set. We've then set up a clash, which is actually clashing the intumescent paint search set against all of our other clash sets that we use. Our architectural, our mechanical, our clean room, electrical, are all clash against this intumescent paint. We actually aren't clashing because, like I said earlier, it's 50 mil clearance we're looking for. So in Revistu, we've actually got a clearance capability where we can, as you can see on screen in the red and green, we've actually got that clearance test being set up. You can see it's 50 mil, and what it does is identifies any issues with all of our disciplines against this steel inside of that 50 mil buffer zone. We also have really good grouping capabilities, so we can group right down to the room that we can then focus our teams in when they need to action part of, let's say, work packages. But more importantly, we do actually filter right down to a zone, and I'll refer to that zone later on. I'll show you how it fits in with our schedule as well. But then the really kicker here is we actually have an end-to-end process where we can create these clashes, find these clashes, but actually it's a one-button solution that will actually automatically go to every single discipline that needs to action their own items. So we have one button because in the advanced automation solution, we can then differentiate between an architectural issue with the intumescent paint, an electrical issue with the intumescent paint, and so on. And it becomes a one-button solution that then gets into, again, the actual the issue tracker where the different disciplines automatically see their issues against that intumescent paint and then work through and resolve those problems. So in the end result, we actually get to site with these issues actually resolved before they've even got there. So our construction team gave us a problem, and we have addressed that problem in design that enables them to get to site and build that site as per expectation. And this has been really traditionally a large challenge on every project. But just to refer to that zone element, it's very hard to see, but at the top left corner, we can actually filter our clashes by the zone. So we have construction zones and how it's going to be built and executed on site. So we can fit that in directly with our schedule, which an example one just on screen. So we can actually clash everything that follows the schedule. So instead of pushing 5,000 clashes into the issue tracker for the entire project, we can focus just 100 our teams need in the next 2 weeks as part of their schedule. And it simplifies, again, pretty much a one-button solution for us. It simplifies that entire process. And our disciplines know that when the clashes are in the issue tracker, they know that they need to address them, and they can't just let them sit there for weeks because they're part of that schedule, they're part of that review process, and they need to get the site and build. And that's all linked just on the left-hand side. So what does it actually look like in the issue tracker? Well, that's just a view of it, and like I mentioned, you can see the actual, the filtering of the issues is all on the right-hand side, where you can see here, we can filter by level, by room, and like I said, most importantly, zone. So the discipline themselves, they'll be able to filter down by the zone, by the issues assigned to them or their department, and work through solving those issues. And then it wouldn't be a demonstration of Revistu without the metrics behind it. So again, just to show you, our metrics that go out as part of the dashboard, quality reporting that goes to the site, to the client, and to our internal teams, they get access to this information and they get to see how the zones are actually going against the issues and clashes being identified. And that's all linked again to the value that we have, directly linked to our schedule, directly linked to the zones we have in our schedule. But look, this can actually be enabled with any other way of reporting, and I think Colin showed a great example there of that reporting and what happens when you have good data and you can make that data available to people. But that was just in the design part of it, so that was how we looked at how we found a challenge in construction and how our projects are delivered. We followed that story, we listened to people, we looked to address it, we used technology. We've now considered we've addressed it in design. But when you get to site, get to construction, I think everybody here knows that when they go to build stuff on site, does it actually get built exactly how design has been? So what we've looked at is a way of how we verify those installed works on site. And we're doing this on a project where we apply traditional methods for the things like potting, hold-down bolts, those sort of things that you can't really capture in things like laser scanning. We use that sort of technology to identify inaccuracies. And we found issues where they've been addressed in that even the hold-down bolts addressed before they'd actually got the steel on site to build. And we've addressed them before it happens, and we move on with those interfaces. But obviously the real cool stuff is heading towards the laser scanning environment and using laser scanning, verifying that in the install, and you can see there we have the data on the bottom sitting inside Revistu as well as Colin mentioned earlier. And just some examples of some of the clashes we've actually identified in this process where we've had a survey partner, a local leading survey partner here in Ireland, laser scan on site. They've taken that data in less than 24 hours. They've got that data into Revistu. We've been able to review that data, and we've identified issues on site, raised the issue in the issue tracker, and the teams on site work through and solve those problems. So you can see a number of issues there identified on site, but there's one I want to point you out to, which is the bottom right-hand corner, which is hard to see, and that is actually from an off-site manufacturing facility. So the laser scan was actually captured in a totally different part of Ireland. The survey was done, we got the data, we brought the scan to the datum on the site, overlaid it against the design, so it hadn't even left the factory yet. We got a factory acceptance test done, we have the data, we brought it onto site, brought it onto the datum, checked against the design, and you can see there we actually had the duct there that would clash when it got to site. So that was actually solved in the factory long before that got to site, and the reality was if that actually got to site, the team may not have seen that as they lifted that entire rack into position, and it would have actually clashed in 3 different locations. So you can start to think around these sort of impacts where quality, safety, time, the schedule, and et cetera goes on. And while it's not on screen, there was one we did actually do an investigation on around the impact it had on the project. And we estimated on this one, it was an external bun wall that was installed incorrectly. It would have impacted the external pipe rack, which is about a 60-meter long span. And we estimated about a €600,000 saving to the project with that one incident that we identified, about an 8-week schedule impact. That was a fantastic outcome for the project. But again, back to metrics, you can see here, we've actually have, so far, since February this year, 286 issues that have been identified on that project to date. About 100 of those have been actual interfacing clashes between the different trades. So we've got that information, accurately captured it, very easily shared that with the trades. The trades can go away, solve their problems, work together with the different trades, come to a solution, and then we move on, close that issue. And you can see 257 of those have been closed, which is fantastic. That's what we want to see. And like, just to finish up, just outcomes from this. I think it's pretty obvious, but back to that story around there was a challenge in construction. We talked to the construction team. We identified where those problems are. We took that on board. We used technology to enable us to be able to one single button solution to solve that problem. And then when they get to construction, we have a full clean 360-degree circle. They can then verify that on site to make sure that equipment, the process piping, the HVAC, the electrical tray is not within 50 milliliters of that intumescent paint. We have full measurable a workflow that, if it is, of how to resolve that problem. So just to be clear, we've simplified our workflows for design, issue, and clash clearance. The construction install is verified against the design. We have real-time coordination between all parties. So if you read the magazine, you'll see up to 12 organizations have been in Revistu with us as the managing. So we've had 12 companies work with us on this one project. And just like, as you can see, it supports fast-track schedule, which most of our projects in pharmaceutical world is all fast-track schedule. It might be a 4-year program, but it actually needs to be built in 2 years. So how do we actually enable the teams? And the more we have conversations, I say it for yourself, the more you have conversations with your construction team as a design team, the better enabled your teams will be in the future. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Fantastic, Ian. I think you broke the record for saying Revistu more times than myself. So Revistu are sponsor on this stage, but that was, we've not chosen the speakers, and that was just fascinated hearing some of those stats, seeing 600,000 euro saving on that construction verification process. So great to hear these fascinating stories and see more familiar faces in the room. Joe, how are you? Good? You're up next? No? It's Peter now. So as we move on, we're on time as well, which is great. Well, 2 minutes beforehand, but Peter's going to change that in a second. Peter's our implementation service manager and is now going to give a technical overview, a live demo of Revistu. So we're just going to switch screens. Hopefully we won't need any help from the back, so give us 2 seconds. Not yet? Okay, not yet. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to Peter.